Welcome into the Autzen Audibles Podcast, pregame edition. Matt Prehm, Eric Scopel, Jared Mack, getting you ready to go for this Friday night 5:40 tilt between Oregon and Oregon State. This is one of the longest standing rivalries in college football. It's tentatively, for now, the last game played in this long series between rivals that are 45-ish minutes apart. I imagine they will play again. When? We don't know. I imagine it'll be relatively soon, but next year, maybe. Beyond that, who knows? It's a series, guys, that like Oregon has the better players. They've got the better depth. They've got the better resources year over year, and yet in the last four, it's 2-2. In the last four, it's come down to basically almost a one-score game every single time. The only time it wasn't was in Eugene in 2021 when it was a 38-29 victory. Oregon was up big in that game, and then Oregon State kind of roared back late. But the last few years, it's been a very close game that defies what should happen on paper because Oregon has the better players. Yet this is a series where you kind of have to throw that out.
Reminds me of, I remember like the late 90s, early 2000s. This is kind of what happened where it just went back and forth, and whoever was hosting almost won each game. Like we're kind of back to that place here, which is, I won't say it's nice because Oregon fans would, of course, like to win every single one of these and win all of them like they did when Willie Taggart was here. I would guess that's one of Taggart's one saving graces. He still has the most lopsided win in the series history back in 17. But from just a pure football competitive game perspective, like these last four games have been that, and that's what I think will be the case this Saturday. We talked about it already a couple times this week. When you look at the Beavers, and we're going to get a little more in depth here with what we see with them today. This is not a pushover team by any means. There's a reason this team has been ranked every week for the entirety of the season, and that they have 3 losses by a combined 8 points. Like this is not a bad football team by any means. This is a very good football team that is a play here or there away from being in a little bit different situation and possibly pushing for a lot greater things than they are this Friday. But yeah, no, it's going to be a game, and I think it's going to be very competitive, and we can get into some of the matchups. Why? Does Oregon have the better players? I think collectively, yes, but like as we'll get into, Oregon State has some dogs. They have some studs on this football roster, and it's not like this is a team that lacks NFL players. There are a lot of Sunday guys playing for the Beavers, and you're going to get a sense of that, I think, on Friday.
Damn good team this Oregon State team is, and it may pain some Oregon fans to hear that, and considering like the little brother, big brother memo. But this is like Matt went through. This has been a very close series. These teams have been, despite potentially not being evenly matched on paper, the games have played evenly matched. So that's exactly what I expect this time around. I don't expect either team to blow the other team out of the water. We went through the numbers on yesterday's podcast about only 2 times since '93 have Oregon State won inside of Autzen Stadium. While history is certainly on that side, like this is going to be a close game. Like Oregon State, they have nothing to lose. Like that's the other side of this that I'm sure we might get into, or we can just get into now. Like if they win, if Oregon State wins, they knock Oregon out of the Pac-12 championship game. Theoretically, Arizona would have to beat Arizona State. I feel good about that. And then they knock Oregon out of a potential college football playoff berth, potentially out of a national championship berth. Like all these dominoes that could fall down could happen at the hands of Oregon State for the second straight year. And that's the fun thing about this game is for 2 straight years now, it's had some real legitimate I can't speak right now, but it's had some legitimate consequences for Oregon losing. There we go. I can finally talk. A bit too early for me. And for Oregon, they have everything on the line. If they win, like I just went through, they go to the Pac-12 championship game with a date against Washington for the second time this season, looking to avenge their loss from earlier in the year. And college football playoff berth on the line in that game. But Oregon State is here inside Autzen Stadium to try to prevent that. And we all saw what happened last year. Oregon players see it every single day in the locker room. And I think that's a good reminder of not to underestimate just because you have the NFL talent or you have like the proverbial Heisman favorite in Bo Nix or you have Troy Franklin, all these guys who have set records this season and you've put up 30 points in every game this year, not to underestimate how good this Jonathan Smith-led team is, how fundamentally sound they are, how physical they are, and how much they just want to beat the snot out of their rivals in Oregon. So I'm excited. This should be a good one.
Yeah, nothing would please Oregon State more than ruining Oregon's season. We had Angie Machado on yesterday, and she mentioned that expectations were high for this team. She thought they were going to go 11-1, and that's obviously not going to happen. They're not going to make the Pac-12 championship game, but she noted that like a lot of that can get righted by beating Oregon and 2 years in a row ruining the season. It's Oregon State has not won at Autzen since 2007. To Eric's point of it's gone back and forth. The home teams like they haven't won here in a long time. This feels like maybe one of their best teams to come into Autzen in a long time. I would argue probably the 08 or the 09 teams or the 09 team. They're odd years when they play in Eugene. But the 09 team, that was the battle for the Roses. That was the game that was in December, freezing cold. That was probably the best team that they have had since this one. I don't know if this one's better than that, or maybe they are. I don't know. But
we'll see on Saturday or Friday.
Yeah. But they're coming in with their best team since that year. And that game was down to the wire to the very end. It took a Jeremiah Masoli truck of a DB to get a first down on fourth down to ice that game. And much like that game, a lot of it is going to depend upon who can stop who, moving the football in the short yardage situations. And short yardage situations, I say that for Oregon with Bucky, whether he's running the football or the checkdowns, that Bo relies on so much. And for Oregon State, it's their two-headed rushing attack. And they've got two dudes that Martinez is a stud. Probably the most underrated offensive player in the Pac-12, in my opinion. Doesn't get near the attention that he should. But then when he has to come out, Fenwick is pretty darn good himself. They're bruising type running backs, and even Isaiah Newell, when he has to come in, their third back, he is a big dude as well. Jared talked about the offensive lines, like up front for Oregon State. Like they've got NFL guys. Even with Bloomfield out at guard, their tackles are tremendous. And this is going to be a huge test for Oregon's front line. This will be probably one of the better teams that they've faced all year up front.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight that. Good transition. Their right tackle, Talisi Fuaga, top-rated offensive lineman in the Pac-12 by PFF. I know people don't like it when we bring up PFF grades, but offensive line play, this is one of the areas where it's like there's not a whole lot of other things to base it on, especially if you're going to get into an individual. So I guess maybe we lean on these too much. But Fuaga, like much higher graded than anyone else in this conference along the offensive line, like significantly better. One of the top tackles in the country. His grade, by the way, is about 89. And for reference, the next best in the conference is 82. Jackson Powers Johnson is right in that range, is kind of one of the next top guys according to PFF in this conference. And it's not just Fuaga either. You look at the way they're graded across the board. These are highly considered players. Bloomfield, while a really, really good player, was their fourth best offensive lineman based upon PFF's marks. So yeah, this is a group up here. I mean, this is as close as Oregon will see to I'd say like a collection of NFL guys. Like I think Fuaga's got like a high ceiling in terms of when he'll be drafted. Some of these other guys will certainly get looks. Tanner Miller's a really good player. Like this is going to be a big test. And we've talked about, the challenge this week of slowing down the run game. And we focused obviously on Martinez because that's where you should start with how talented of a runner he is. But the offensive line is what keeps it going, right? And that's the same thing you see when you watch Oregon play. I think this is kind of a fun one probably for both offensive lines of feeling like, these are two of I think Washington was also a Joe Moore semifinalist. I think those three schools were all, I think Oregon,
They were,
Oregon State, Washington. Yeah. Thanks, Jared. So you're looking at two of the best three offensive lines in the conference here that are facing off. And that's part of the challenge. It's not just like they've got this awesome running back. He makes it happen. This isn't Jaden Ott all over again, where it's like, man, if Ott can just break a couple of plays. No, it's a group up front that's going to provide real challenges for Oregon's front, and I'm really excited to see how it plays out. We saw what happened last year, and it's a lot of the same personnel pieces up front for Oregon State from a year ago, and we saw the way that game finished. And Oregon's going to be extremely motivated. Those guys up front, and a lot of them are back, are going to be extremely motivated to rectify what took place last year at Reser.
A lot of them are back, and there's a lot of new guys too. And there's a lot of different looking guys as well. I talked about that on the Mailbag podcast where, Oregon beefed up this offseason. They got a lot bigger. All the linebackers gained 20 pounds. They brought in Justin Jacobs from Iowa, who is more than equipped to play the downhill run scheme. That is the Big Ten West. Iowa, again, not scoring, but playing great defense against the Big Ten West this season. They are better equipped. I think a lot of times last season there were moments where you could tell the lack of size and strength and speed inside the front seven against certain opponents. And last year against Oregon State, that was certainly the case. This season, Oregon has really amped up their production from the linebacker position, from the defensive line position, with the additions of guys like Brandon Norris is already here, but guys like Jordan Birch, bringing in other talents like Justin Jacobs, like I talked about, but then beefing up the interior. Like Casey Rogers was a guy who added 20 pounds. Brandon Norris stayed the same weight, but added muscle. Jordan Birch is just a crazy athlete. He was on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list. I think he was a top 5 guy in that. So I would say Oregon is better equipped this time around to go against this Oregon State front. But being better equipped doesn't necessarily translate into winning that matchup or winning the battle. This is still going to be a lot of fun inside the trenches to watch because, like Eric just went through, it's a damn good offensive line for Oregon State and probably the best one that Oregon has faced this year. I would put them ahead of Washington. I would put them ahead of Utah. I think that they're really, really good. And Fuaga as a tackle. If you go back and watch Oregon State and Washington from this past week, he was moving people around. And Washington did a really good job, and they put Braylon Trice on the other side of the line because Fuaga was doing a good job handling him on his own with an occasional chip from Martinez or Fenwick or somebody like that. But they put Trice on the other side of the field, and he started to dominate. And with Oregon's defensive line rotations, I'm interested to see what they find out is going to be the right measure, what to do to get some pocket pressure on DJ Uyunglele. And maybe that is just, hey, I'm going to put our best pass rusher not on that side of the field. And that would be a pretty good idea if you ask me, because he can change the game as an offensive lineman. And there are very few of those inside the Pac-12 and basically inside the country. So that's going to be a point of emphasis. How is Oregon going to get pressure against this offensive line, whether it be simulated, whether it be guys just winning their one-on-one matchups? They need to get pressure on DJ and force him into 3rd and longs like I've been talking about all week. If you get pressure on 3rd and longs, I think that's a good recipe for success if you're Oregon's defense.
We should also note that this time around, the Ducks are not the school dealing with coaching rumors. Jonathan Smith is Football Scoop earlier reported that he is Michigan State's top target and that they believe they can get him. Jonathan Smith went on, I think, the John Canzano show this week. And, he was honest. He made his impressions on Oregon State and how he likes it here, but he also didn't say no, that he was committed to Oregon State long term, that just his agent's doing his job and fielding the offers and seeing what's out there because that's what he should be doing.
He was incredibly honest. That was I've never seen an answer like that. He's like, yeah, no, I pay my agent a lot, so he better do his stupid job and go find me some contract offers. I'd never seen a coach talk like that.
And you factor in last week's game where they lost an emotional one. That was conveyed by Angie on yesterday's show. Like, they're going to be amped up, but what happens when they face their first test of adversity here? There's a lot going on beyond just what's happening between the lines for Oregon State. There's the conference realignment stuff. There's the rumors with their head coach, and they're coming off a very emotional loss that Oregon came off a very easy win. You know, they rested all of their starters, Saturday afternoon. And, they landed in Eugene probably around the time that Washington game was getting close to ending. And, that has to factor in some point. How much? I don't know. But these are two teams that feels like they're just kind of going in different directions right now. And how quickly can Oregon State kind of flush that and lock in? I think they will, but it has to be brought up at some point, at least.
With the Smith part, I just wonder if he decides to strike when the iron is hot, considering all the question marks around Oregon State going forward. And, I think of Matt Campbell, the Iowa State coach several years ago, just being like the hottest of hot names. Remember that? Like, everybody wanted him, and then he hung around, and now it's like he's probably stuck in Ames for a long time.
No one wants Matt Campbell.
Right. So, if you're Jonathan Smith, you go, gosh, and I think Jonathan Smith's a really, really good football coach. I think anybody listening to this objectively knows he's a really good football coach. Has he had some tough decisions? Of course. Dan Lanning's had tough decisions. Do I think I still can't get over that game against Arizona, why they went for a fake field goal to end the half, where they were and what the play call was. But regardless, he's a really good football coach, and you just do wonder, thinking out loud here, if he goes let's survey the landscape, and Michigan State's actually is in a conference going forward. That's a program that it's not that long ago was competing for a college football playoff, right? Berth, when Mel Tucker first got there and got that massive contract that created some of these problems for the Spartans. And I don't have any doubts he could succeed there either, or in a lot of different places. So, yeah, that's something that I'm sure is on Oregon State fans' minds, as it is on Oregon fans have been through this too recently with Mario Cristobal. You just think about the way that season ended in Las Vegas. Matt and I were both down there, and the talk around the town was not about that football game as much as it was what's going on with Mario Cristobal. And when that's the case, that can cause real problems. So we'll see how well Oregon State handles that, how their players handle that, how much they're even aware of that. But they can't be completely ignorant to the fact that those rumors are at least starting to circulate. And as Jared said, he's on record saying some stuff that didn't exactly shut it down. He didn't take the Dan Lanning approach and just close the book.
Can't blame him.
I appreciate the way Smith did it. Then have you guys seen the videos of Jeff Traylor, the UTSA head coach, interviewing?
Yeah, he just did the deflection. It's I can't believe you're asking me about that, and not about my 14 seniors. That, that is not a good look. But I mean, for Jonathan Smith, I at least appreciate it. And I can't blame him for the reasons Eric went through. Michigan State is in a conference. He's going to get a payday. There's a lot of uncertainty surrounding what Oregon State is going to do in the next couple of years, as is Washington State. There are obviously going to be more jobs that come open, but Jake Dickert at Washington State, if he's getting like what Jonathan Smith said, he's getting millions of dollars a year, and he's paying his agent a lot of money. If it wouldn't surprise me if he was not looking around actively, but fielding offers. Okay, well, that I would actually get to coach in X conference, and that's financial security, it's financial stability. You can continue to move through the ranks if you're Jonathan Smith. If you put together the types of seasons that he has at Oregon State, at Michigan State, that's a lot different. You're going to get an incredible amount of national praise as a head coach, and and he's going to get a lot of funding too. Phoenix Suns owner Matt Ishbia is an alumni there. They've got a strong alumni base. They got a lot of money. He'll be fine there too. But if you're Oregon State, I think this is the first time today when Football Scoop reported that it's been a legitimate rumor. There's been some kind of reporting where it's like, oh, like Jonathan Smith would be a great candidate for Michigan State or Mississippi State with Zach Arnett going down, but Football Scoop is on top of it. And this is the first time I've seen like a legitimate, like, yeah, this is their top target. Like they talk to other people, but Jonathan Smith is the guy. And, you know, like once it starts to leak, you know, it's going to start to flow. Like there's going to be more things that probably come out before game time. And I'm interested to see what it's going to be like before game time, because last season when Kenny Dillingham was a candidate for the Arizona State head coaching job, there weren't a lot of leaks, and then they came later in the day, and then it just fell out of the fishbowl. Like everything came out, and it's like, oh, Kenny Dillingham is gone. The game ended 25 minutes ago. He is now gone. He is going to Arizona State to be the head coach. And you know, pregame the line shifted from, I don't know, like Oregon was only a couple point favorite, and then all of a sudden Oregon State was a 2 or 3 point favorite, and we were all like, "What? Why? Like, did somebody not make the trip? Is Bo Nix not playing? Like, what's going on here?" And then afterwards, you're like, "Oh, yeah, this makes sense." So I checked the line, no movement.
I'm sure it will move. I'm sure it'll go up.
If this gets more legs from guys like Bruce Feldman or Stuart Mandel who start talking about it, then it'll probably get something.
All right. From an injury standpoint, we say this every week. Oregon is about as healthy as they possibly can be. Jalil Florence was not at practice when we were there on Tuesday, but that doesn't mean he wasn't at practice Wednesday or Thursday. I think all three of us kind of expect that he plays. This is a common occurrence, but outside of Noah Whittington, there really isn't anybody else that, I don't mean this meanly, but of importance. Like, there's guys hurt. There's guys that are dealing with stuff, but they aren't players that would play in this game if it was close.
We should acknowledge, and I know Jared said it on our Tuesday show, but we've not got any new information because this week is unique because of the short week with the game being played on a Friday rather than a Saturday. We only had one day at practice, so it was Tuesday, so we weren't in there on Wednesday. So we don't have an update. Whatever we said on Tuesday, that's still what we know to this point. So, but yeah, you know, the thing, just briefly on Florence, I think the thing that you want him out there, he's clearly their second best corner. I don't think there's any question. Oregon also has a lot of other long, rangy guys. And one of the things I've been thinking about with this matchup, and I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, is the contested catch and the advantage Oregon should theoretically have there with their size, like Kyrie Jackson, Triquez Bridges, even Dante Manning, Jalil Florence. Those guys are all like long, rangy guys. I think Dante Manning's listed at 5'11", but his wingspan, he told us, is like close to 7 feet. You know, all those guys are long, rangy guys. And that's just not the body type that Oregon State has at receiver. And that's not to say Oregon State can't win matchups, because they can certainly outrun those guys and run themselves free. But if this is a game where Oregon is able to, you know, keep in contact with these guys and play good coverage, the ball gets in the air. This is not Rome Odunze. You know, this is not a guy who's going to go out, leap you, and take the ball from you a lot of the time. So that's one of the things I've been thinking about. Now, that's not to diminish Florence's role. It's just to say I think they have a couple of other guys out there they could throw in there who would also be able to at least stay hip to hip and make it difficult on those guys. So I you know, we'll see what happens with Jalil. We'll have updates, you know, an hour or so before kickoff on Friday evening. But I think they can manage without him, and we know that in part because they've had to so much this season because of injury. Where he's how many second halves? How many games has he finished this year? It's not a
lot.
Yeah, it's not. It's probably about half the games, maybe even less.
I wonder how much of that is like what happened last week, though, where, hey, we know we can get away with you not playing this second half. We have the lead.
I think there's only a handful of those, though. Like, he's been hurt, and he started the second half against Arizona State and then hurt something and then went out of the game. So even he would have been pulled if he were healthy. But even still, he didn't finish that game more to injury than just being pulled. So, I mean, it's happened a lot. I can think of at least 3 games off the top of my head, maybe 4 off the top of my head, where he's been pulled due to injury rather than just finishing the game. So, but I agree with you, Eric. Like, that's one of the defensive points for Oregon. Oregon State's receivers, I think we've talked about it on the podcast, are all not tall. They're 5'9" and shorter, and that can work for an offense, and it has at points for Oregon State, because they can, like Eric said, they can run themselves free of coverage. They do a good job scheming them open and creating screens, creating opportunities for them to get into open space and just try to make guys miss on the other side. But if you're Oregon and you're a predominant man versus man team, it's going to be a difficult matchup for sure because of the speed that these guys possess. But you do have length, and you do have size, and you do have speed. And you can probably, if you're Dante Manning and Kyrie Jackson and Nico Reed, I think is going to be an important part of this defense this week. Like, they need to keep up speed-wise and keep a tight window throw, because that's what you need to force DJ Uyunglele into doing, is trying to throw into tight windows. Because against Washington, under pressure and into tight windows, it didn't exactly always work. And again, I've been on record multiple times. I love DJ Uyunglele. I think he's great, but he hasn't been that great this season. And there have been a lot of games. There's been at least 3 or 4 games where he's been at like 50% completion percentage or worse. There's only been a handful of games where he's even touched the 70s. So he is not the most efficient passer. He does not have the best touch on the ball. So if you can keep it to be close, tight-knit man coverage and force him into throwing into tight windows, I have to like that advantage for Oregon, because they are not the playmaking receivers like Eric went through, like Jalen McMillan and Polk and Roma Dunze of Washington, where they're going to win a one-on-one matchup just because they're going to leap over you. They're 6 feet tall or taller, and they're just more athletic and have better hands. Like, these are going to be contested catches that if they make them for Oregon State, good on them. That's just how it goes. But tight windows, forcing that, playing man coverage, and getting after the quarterback, I think are, what I talked about a little bit earlier of getting to the quarterback, are really important in this game.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive into some of our bold picks for this week. Welcome back to the Autzen Audibles Podcast. I want to remind you guys the best way to support the show is signing up for a VIP membership at duckterritory.com. You can do so today and save 75% off an annual membership. Get billed $26.85 one time and get access for the next 12 months to duckterritory.com. Oregon's got the number 6 class in the country for recruiting for football. They're the number 6 team in the country for the college football playoffs. Men's and women's basketball seasons have kicked off. Jared's baseball coverage will start here in a couple of months. We'll have softball coverage this season as well. You can get all of that by signing up for an annual membership at duckterritory.com for $26.85, 75% off. All right, let's dive into some game picks here. Let me pull up the score prediction updates. Last week, Jared and Eric went 1-3, and I went 2-2 game picks. Jared and I are tied. Eric is 2 behind, so he's still there. He still has a chance. We've seen us, one of us or 2 of us at one time even go 0 for 4. So there's an opportunity for Eric to catch us. Game prediction leaderboards. Eric and Jared are 11-0 straight up, and I am 10-1 straight up. And then we all have different numbers from a prediction against the spread standing. Okay, offensive team prediction here. I'm very high on Oregon's offense in this game. I think it's going to be one of the bigger games of the season for them. I went back and looked at what's kind of like the highest number Oregon has put up against the Beavers. Dating back to 2016, the number is 577. I don't think they're going to hit 577 in this game. That number came in Willie Taggart's year of 2017. OSU's most yards allowed this year is 492, which came week 2 against Fresno State. 492 seems too easy for these 2 gentlemen that I am making these picks for. So I figured out I'll just go in the middle. 534 of total offense for Oregon. I think they put up the highest total yards allowed by the Beaver defense. It won't be that 577 number, but it will be kind of close. 534 for Oregon's offense.
Bold Matt is back, huh? There you go. Back at it. I think this one's pretty bold, actually. We'll see. I was looking through explosive pass plays in part because I was looking at Oregon recently had so many the last two games. Ducks have had 4 pass plays of 50 or more the last 2 weeks and 2 more of 40 or more. So that's 6 in 2 games, which is a large number. Oregon State's allowed 2 all season over 50. So I'm going with, and I changed the number just to be even more bold. Originally I said 1 pass play over 50, but that seemed like I was being easy on myself. So I'm going 2 pass plays over 50 yards on Saturday. Be 3 straight games of them accomplishing that. And again, Oregon State's allowed 2 all season. They're one of the best teams nationally in limiting those explosive pass plays. And Washington just last week, I believe, had none. I know that was a torrential downpour in the first half and not really a pass-friendly day, but I think Oregon's going to throw the ball in this game. That's sort of where my mind is at looking at this one. We'll get into our score predictions and why we think the game plays out the way we do later. But I think there might be a little bit more pass success than some people are focusing in on this one.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Matt, the Fresno State was from last season. The most that they've allowed. Yeah, that was 2022. Most that they've allowed this season is 528 yards to Washington State. That's when Cameron Ward.
Wow, I'm still higher than that.
422. Yeah. No, you're still good. This isn't really a team stat. I want to do like a total passing yard stat, but that's more of like, oh, Bo Nix is going to do this. So I guess I'll save that for my player one. I had another yardage stat. I'm not as I guess as confident as Matt is in terms of how the offense is going to perform with 530 plus yards. I don't think that they're going to hit 500 yards, but I do think they're going to put up the second highest total of the season against Oregon State's defense of over 453 yards. I think that Oregon State's defense is still good. I think that they have some problems in defending the pass. I think they're like in the 60s for defending the pass in the country. And Oregon in the last couple of weeks has just dominated through the passing department with Bo Nix. He's thrown for 400 yards or close to it in the 3 straight weeks. So I think that they're going to put up numbers there, like Eric talked about in the passing department, over 453 yards. I can't get to the 500. I just don't think it's going to happen. All right. Offensive player. I'll stick with my original prediction. I'm going to go with Tez Johnson here. I think that Troy Franklin's going to be the obvious number 1 target for Oregon here. But I think Tez is going to surprise some people. I think I don't think he's going to hit 1,000 yards this year, but he's going to finish the season with a lot of good stuff. And going against Oregon State for the first time in his career, I have him at 6+ catches, 85+ yards, and over 1.5 touchdowns. Ooh. So I think he's going to be the beneficiary of a lot of coverage towards Troy Franklin. I have a neat little stat to share.
Shoot.
That I think will benefit Tez and even like maybe Gary Bryant. Oregon State has 154 missed tackles this season through 11 games. So that's like 13 or 14 a game.
It's a good number.
Is it?
13 is not bad for an average.
Would you like to know how many Oregon has?
Much fewer.
78, half of it.
Oregon is like the top tackle team on PFF.
So this is an opportunity. If you watch that Washington game, and again, the weather certainly didn't help, but there were a lot of opportunities to make tackles either in the backfield or stop a gain on Dylan Johnson, and Oregon State did not. And I think that could really help Tez and try to get to my numbers here of over 85 yards, just breaking tackles and turning a 6-yard gain into a 15-yard gain or something like that. So give me Tez as a player.
Were you thinking of doing a Bo Nix passing yard stat?
I was, yeah, because I think that's going to be it's going to be the narrative after the game.
I'm really happy you didn't take that because I spent a dumb amount of research on this one, and I was going to be really bummed if I had to change it. I was just going to share the information right after. So I went and I looked all the way back to 2009 because that was about as far back as I wanted to go. I'll be honest, college football stats, that's as far back as they go, is back to 2009. No one's even come close to having 4 consecutive 350-yard passing games, which is where I'm predicting Bo will go. He's had 3 in a row over 350. Again, this is quite bold, I think. Nobody back to Masoli had done 3 in a row. Mariota did 2 in a row and then 3 out of 4, and then was 15 yards short in 2013. So the year before his Heisman Trophy, he got really close a couple of times. But nobody's done 4 over 350. So I'm predicting that. And then the other part that was kind of interesting looking through this is currently Bo has 6 games of 350 or more yards in his 2 years at Oregon. Do you know how many the previous 7 Oregon starting quarterbacks had combined?
2.
It's more.
4.
It's more. It's 8, which I still thought which is impressive because we're going back like 15 years here.
Yeah.
Anthony Brown had none, not a shock. Justin Herbert had 2, and none of them were his senior year, by the way. Vernon Adams had 2. Mariota had 3, and again, they were all in that 4-game span there. Darren Thomas had 1, and Jeremiah Masoli, again, shocker, didn't do it. So I was just trying to put into perspective how special it'd be if he gets there. This is something that, again, I only went back to 2009. I didn't want to go by game all the way back to the 80s or something, but I'm gonna guess.
Can't imagine those happen though.
I don't think so, because there might have been a couple of
college football was different back then.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, I think Bo Nix has a big passing day, 350 or more through the air, and that again goes along with my 2 long passes for the offense there.
Well, I'm not gonna change mine because mine's even bolder than Eric's, so I think that justifies as it being okay. I have Bo going for the highest passing yard total against OSU's defense this season, which is 404 yards. I believe
that'd be 3 straight 400, I think, right?
He would have to throw for 423, Matt, against Washington State.
Yeah. No, well, I checked that one.
Individually you're talking about?
Yeah, individually.
Did they
Washington
have
State. Let me pull it up here in a second. Against. Yeah, he did 422. Sorry. So 423 yards.
Jeez.
I had it at 403. I think I got stuck on the 2002 or 2022 season. I was looking at stuff back like Eric was, and then whatever. I'm still sticking with it. 423 yards passing or more for Bo Nix. I think this is to Eric's point of like him doing something that Oregon quarterbacks just haven't done at 350 or more. Like when people look at Bo Nix and they ask, well, what's his Heisman moment? Like his Heisman moment is his consistency. He is always doing X or more every single week. And there is no dip. And I think, 400 yards is a lot. 423 is even more. And that's going to be his moment. It's not going to be one singular play where, like we were joking at Media Day yesterday, he strikes the post if he scores a touchdown like Mariota did or something. But
I do want to see that. I do want to see him strike the post. Come on.
But his moment is every single week. There's no drop off. He is just good every single week. And it doesn't matter if it's against the school blind or if it's an elite defense like this one in Oregon State. So I guess now 423 or more yards.
Yeah.
All right. Defensive team prediction here. Knowing that Oregon has had this on loop all year or all week of the fourth quarter down in Corvallis or up in Corvallis, I guess I should say. And you look at the players that Oregon has gone out and added to its roster, the players that have beefed up currently on its roster from last season. This team's going to be motivated to stop the run. Everything in this game is built around stopping the run. If you stop Oregon State's rushing attack and make them face second and third longs, you're going to be in an advantageous position to make big plays and ultimately win this football game. I think Oregon this is another Super Bowl pick. I think OSU is going to have their lowest rushing total of the season. It's 131. They did it twice this season, Arizona and Utah games, I think Oregon's going to basically look at the game plan that they used against Utah and say, your receivers, your tight ends do not scare us one bit. We are totally comfortable with going one-on-one press coverage and loading the box and blitzing from all over the place. And you are just not going to be able to run the football, and you're going to have to throw. And we believe we'll dominate in that situation. So I think 130 or more or less from a rushing perspective for Oregon State. I think Oregon's defense shows up big time.
I had that one too, like verbatim, but I had a backup that I'm excited to share just because the stats interesting more than anything, which is Oregon State is 40 of 41 in red zone opportunities of just coming away with any points, which is second nationally. I think Missouri has like 43 of 44 or something crazy. That's just really, really hard to do over the course of a season. And I can't remember the exact yardage on that field goal, but it's possible the one time they didn't come away with it was that Arizona play I referenced earlier where they went for the fake field goal rather than taking the points. So I'm going to say that this game is one where Oregon State is forced, kind of similar to of course everybody remembers this, but the reason behind Dan chasing points so aggressively against Washington and Seattle was because he knew that they were in for it and that they were going to have to maximize scoring opportunities. I could see Jonathan Smith, who's not adverse to being aggressive, going for it a couple of times on fourth down in the red zone rather than taking the points just to try to keep pace and try to maximize those scoring opportunities. So I'm going to say Oregon holds them scoreless on 2 red zone trips, which, again, they've only been held without points once all year. I think this one's pretty bold. I'm not sure as bold as Matt's because 130 rushing yards. Oregon State, that's a rushing team right there, which is why I was going that route originally. But I think Oregon's defense is going to come up big in the red zone. Oregon defensively has been, by the way, pretty solid in that area of the field. So, yeah, mark me down for a couple of red zone stops where Oregon State comes away scoreless.
I've talked about this on this podcast already. I think that turnovers are going to be a problem here. And it's not going to be like it was against Washington because of the conditions. I think it's actually going to maybe be like sunny or something like that this Friday for the game. So that's crazy. It was sunny yesterday. It was crazy. So
62
I still
degrees,
think,
baby.
I know. It was wild. It was windy in the morning. Then it got really nice during the midday. I still think that, kind of like what Matt was talking about with the rushing attack, that Oregon is going to line up and play single man and try to play tight coverage while loading the box. And I think they're going to apply a lot of pressure onto DJ Uiagalelei. And I think that pressure is going to come with some decision-making problems. And I have 2 or more turnovers. And I don't really expect 2 or more turnovers for Oregon State, Oregon's defense forces. And I don't really expect Damian Martinez to fumble the ball. He's a dude, and he's gonna give some licks too. And if Oregon can force him to fumble, good on you. That's a tough task. But when watching the game against Washington, and then rewatching it again last night, like Kirk Herbstreit did a really good job of like detailing how DJ Uiagalelei had a second interception, of how Washington's defense was trying to confuse him from the line of scrimmage, where they had 2 deep safeties, high safeties at the top. And as soon as the ball was snapped, one of them just came down and jumped into the middle of the field. And all of a sudden there's a 1 high safety. And that's a completely different look than what DJ was seeing pre-snap. And so DJ had some pressure, panicked, threw the ball over the middle. Lo and behold, there were 2 guys there, and one of them came away with the interception. Oregon's defense, when they are firing on all cylinders, has all of these simulated pressures where they may look like they're coming from the left and then come from the right, or come from the middle, and then all of a sudden they're coming on the edges with a cornerback blitz. That's been DJ Uiagalelei's biggest problem in college, is his decision-making process, which, hey, that happens to a lot of quarterbacks. Oregon has one on their team currently. Like, I think Dan and Tosh are going to try to make this a very difficult game for DJ to understand from a football concept. And so with that, I think there's going to be pressure. I think there's going to be decision-making problems. And I think there's going to be 2 or more turnovers, however they may be. I think they're going to be interceptions for the Oregon Ducks defense. And then we're going to go directly into players, defensive players. This could be a guy who forces some of those problems. I have Justin Jacobs having a day.
Ooh.
I have him over 7 tackles.
Uh-oh.
it looks like Matt had the same thing.
I did.
Sure does.
Same number 2.
Oh, wow. 7 was kind of arbitrary. I just thought it sounded good. I don't think he's around the ball as much as like Evan Williams is to have like 10 tackles, but I digress. Like I was talking about earlier in this podcast, Justin Jacobs was a guy that Oregon brought in to be more physical, to be more athletic than the linebackers that they had last season. Be able to move east to west, north to south, do all the things that the linebackers last year couldn't do. Mainly, cover running backs out of the backfield and play pass defense and stop the run when people run at them. And that's exactly what he's going to do on Friday. And I have him over 7 tackles because I just think that Oregon State, despite the fact that I like their offense, they can get guys out in the perimeter and do all those fun things and have a trick play every once in a while, they're still going to be a hard-nosed team and run right up the middle sometimes. And it's up to the linebackers to not overrun their assignments and create gaps and holes in this offensive line because they'll, like Dan said, they'll crease you, and there'll be Damian Martinez for 12 to 15 yards every single time. So Justin Jacobs was brought in to be a stopper to this type of offense. He hasn't been spectacular or anything like that this season. His highest total was 6 tackles. That was against Washington State, his first game back. But I think he shows up like he has a good day at the office on Friday.
It's a good week to make a linebacker tackle prediction just based upon how
I agree,
Oregon State plays, right? Because like most weeks we would lean on like an Evan Williams, maybe somebody like that. Steve Stevens, I think we've said a couple times, but this feels like one where that second level is going to be active. I'm going back to the well here. This has become this year's Bucky Irving over 100 yards, but Kyrie Jackson with an interception for the exact reasons that Jared laid out not long ago. And for the point that I made earlier, where I think this is Oregon has the bigger athletes at corner compared to the receivers they're matched up against. That means contested balls are potentially going to end up in the defensive back's hands as opposed to in the more diminutive receivers' hands. So I like Kyrie here. I think he's been not thrown at very much, which is part of the reason that I never seem to get this prediction right. I think this is my 3rd or 4th time making it. Shame on me. But I'm going back to it here, and I think he has an interception. And he had 2 in back-to-back weeks in non-league play, but nothing in conference play. I think he closes the regular season out with 1 and maybe a big day. We'll see. Again, if the game script comes to pass where Oregon State is needing to throw the ball down late in this one, I could see Jared's point coming to fruition pretty easily in terms of multiple interceptions with DJ trying to fit it into tight windows and Oregon's athletes just being in position to make plays.
All right, I've pivoted. I think Brandon Dorlus is going to have a season high in tackles. I think my first pick was Justin Jacobs, same number, same very reason as Jared's. But I think a guy that could also make plays in this game is going to be Dorlus. And I thought it was interesting that he kind of opened up on Tuesday about last season he tried to make the NFL play and not play within the system. And this season he's doing his job because he understands that if he does his job, he has teammates around him who will do theirs, and the play will get made, whether it's him or somebody else. And that's actually, he said, led to a more productive season for him. I think Oregon State's going to try and run the football. I think they're going to fail, obviously. And that's going to lead to some situations of DJU having to throw the football. And like what Jared said, we saw him make some kind of rushed throws against Washington's defense. And now without Bloomfield in the lineup, I understand that their tackles are still good, but their interior play was not very good against Washington. I think Dorlus has a better defensive lineman than Washington has in the interior. And he's going to, whether he's making tackles on Martinez or whether he's getting to DJU, I think he's going to have a season high 6 tackles. I almost went career high, but then I realized it's like 8, which came against BYU a couple of years ago, I believe, which is too high for my bold predictions here. So season high 6 or more tackles for Brandon Dorlus in this one.
It's tough, to your point, for an interior defensive lineman to get 8 in a game is like pretty unusual.
Yeah.
So 6 is fair. I like it.
All right, game picks here. I've obviously said that Oregon's going to have a big day throwing the football. They're going to shut down the Oregon State defense. For all week, I've thought this game was going to be close. And maybe it's the optimism in me. I don't know. I think it's going to be a blowout. I think Oregon is extremely upset about what happened last season and the ramifications that it had. I think this team is hyper-focused on every week playing its best football. They have, by far, on paper, the better roster than what Oregon State does. Yes, they have NFL players too. Oregon has more of them. And they have better depth. This game's at home. I think the fact that this is Bo Nix's last game is going to factor into it. A lot of big guys, Troy Franklin, probably his last game at Oregon. Probably Bucky Irving's last game, Brandon Dorles's last game. It might be Jeffrey Boss's last game at Oregon. Maybe. I don't know. But those emotions will play out. I think this team wants to see Washington. This team feels like they're the best team in the conference. They're going to show it yet again. This isn't going to be close. Oregon's going to win 49-17. It's going to be one of those statement games where all day Saturday you see the highlights from Friday night. Well, let's check back into Eugene. This team did this. You got to keep pace with the Ducks because they looked really good.
And you think Bo kind of solidifies some of that Heisman talk too?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not quite as bullish as Matt. I've gone back and forth, and unfortunately, I was asked to make a score prediction on for the Beaver Blitz Q&A earlier this week, and I've already made it, and I feel like I should just be a man of my word, even though I'm a little more confident than the score prediction I made the other day, which was 35-24 Oregon, so not a cover. Again, I made this Monday. Part of the reason this condensed week, man, I feel like I was doing too much too soon, so I'm going to apologize for that because I do think there's a high likelihood this game is more lopsided than that. And then for those unfamiliar, we just made these bold predictions, and I was like, Oregon State's not going to do anything, and Oregon's going to do all these things. Like those are, I don't know how the rest of these guys kind of put their score predictions together, but I kind of separate those. Those are just kind of like fun things to maybe happen that could happen. And then the game picks is a little bit separated. So just to clarify that, because if you're going like Bo's going to throw for 350, Oregon's going to have 2 50-yard passes, there's going to be turnovers, Oregon State's not going to score in the red zone. How is this an 11-point game? All very valid questions. But I'm leaning on the fact that like Oregon State's not been beaten soundly all year. Like, again, 8 combined points and 3 losses. They've been a couple of plays from winning some of those games. They've got a run game that's really hard to slow down. And while I'm confident that Oregon can do a better job than last year, because basically anything would be a better job than last year, I don't know if it's going to be quite enough to just shut them down and run away in this one. So I'm going 35-24. I'll stick with that score. I could see a game closer to Matt for sure. I could also see a game where it's like down to the final couple possessions, and that's sort of where I'm landing. So Ducks by 11 in a game that, again, they win. They go to play Washington again in Vegas. We get to talk about a lot of fun stuff next week. I'm knocking on wood that this prediction comes to pass, because I think Oregon-Washington Part 2 could be one of the more exciting games I've covered in my time doing this.
It sure would be. It sure would be. I have Oregon winning 38-24. I think that's even a little bit too high to me for Oregon's 38. Not to say that I don't think that they'll do well. This game just is so very rarely not like a one-score game. And Oregon State has nothing to play for, which means they have everything to play for. And, you know, if your season's over and you can go and ruin your rival's season and do it for the second straight year in a row, like that's what I'm going to want to do if I'm playing for the Oregon State Beavers. And if I'm Oregon, like Matt laid it out, like there's a lot of senior night emotions, things like that. It's a Friday night game. It's a little bit different all around. Oregon just came off of a nice win against Arizona State, so that definitely helps them, that they don't necessarily have to rest up and heal like they would have if they played Utah the week before. That certainly helps. And, you know, Oregon State's coming off the Washington game. I don't know how much the Jonathan Smith distractions are going to factor into this game. I don't think any, if at all. I don't think it's going to be like how Mario was for Oregon. I think it'll be more of like, let's rally around Jonathan Smith, because it's not his fault that he's leaving. It's more or less like the conference's fault that he's leaving, and just, he's doing what's right for him and his family more so than anything else. But I still think that Oregon gets the job done. I still think that Bo Nix has a good day. I still think that he helps solidify his Heisman candidacy. I think that Oregon tries to get a little bit more on the ground than they have the last couple of weeks with Bucky Irving and Jordan James. I just don't think it'll be that high scoring, because I think Oregon State is going to understand that what they have to do is have that 16-play, 75-yard, 10-minute drive like they did against Washington. And 10 minutes for Bo Nix to sit on the sideline is not going to help how many points are being scored. But it'll all come down to if Oregon can stop the run or not. And Damian Martinez and Deshaun Fenwick, if they get going, it could be a long day at the office for Oregon. But I have them winning by 14. That's covering the spread in some places, not covering the spread in other places. Again, my heart is telling me that it's going to be a little bit closer than that. I'm not as bullish as the other guys here. I just think it's going to be a good, close game. I think that Oregon State's going to come hard and really come ready to play. But, Oregon will eventually remain victorious.
I'll make the executive call. The line that I would off of is 13.5. So a 14-point win gives you the cover.
Sure, but some books do and do not have it. I've seen some like 14.5. So, but Caesars, the official sports book, 24/7 Sports, says 13.5.
So we'll give you the cover. All right, that's going to do it for us here on the Autzen Audibles podcast. Next time you hear from us will be Friday night, recapping the game. Hopefully not the last version of this rivalry, but for now it is. Until then, you've been listening to the Autzen Audibles podcast.
Happy Thanksgiving, folks.
Peace.